Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So, taking a look at Special Booster 1.5 and all that it added to the card pool, we definitely have a lot of new tools that we could think about utilizing to build some really powerful budget decks with. So you could build this deck for about $25 depending on where you look. I know that it says at 42 right here, but that's like the average market value and it's not incorporating any of the low sellers. So you realistically should be able to build this deck for about $25, all depending on where you look. But the fact that the game definitely has some really powerful budget options definitely is really good, so that way you could at least still think about picking up and playing the game. Even though this deck isn't going to be like super tier 1 meta competitive, it's still going to be a really decent deck and it's still really fun to play. So with all of the new tools that we got added, we got one of the better budget megas that Purple could be playing around with in the form of MaloMyotismon, and VenomMyotismon complements Malo relatively nicely because both of their themes are manipulating the memory, and compared to a lot of other Purple megas, they definitely are on the more beefier side. So those are going to be the two primary megas that the deck is going to be focused around, and it's going to have the sub-theme of manipulating the memory. So it definitely has a lot of really powerful tools that all help this deck move along and function. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Pagumon. So you could think about utilizing Yaman if you really feel like. It doesn't really matter. I just feel like for what the deck is trying to do, Pagumon fits a little bit better because he has a nice inheritable ability of when attacking, we get to trash the top card of our deck. So even though we're not exactly trying to trash the top card of our deck, the fact that we have an inheritable that works off of our ultimates, which is most of the time where our inheritables are going to stop, because of how our ultimates function, is definitely why I'm choosing to run Pagumon over Yaman. But again, it doesn't necessarily matter. This is just the filler slot for the Digitama. But the main Digitama of the deck is going to be 4 copies of DemiMeramon. So DemiMeramon is just an absolutely insane Digitama for the deck just because he has this nice on-delete ability where we get to draw 1 and discard 1. So looting is generally a really powerful mechanic to be working around with because not only is it digging through our deck faster, but it's also allowing us to utilize our hand to help set up our trash for some more specific utility later on in the game. So DemiMeramon being a really powerful inheritable that does work with our ultimates definitely makes it one of the best, if not the best, Digitama we could run. Next on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gabumon. So Gabumon is basically in here for the exact same reasons as DemiMeramon. The looting ability is just really good where we get to draw 2 and discard 1. And again, it works off of our ultimates and that's what we're really looking to gain out of the card. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Tapirmon. So Tapirmon is just another really fantastic Digimon for the deck to be playing around with because he has this innate ability of on delete, allowing us to draw 1 card. So this combos with DemiMeramon, this combos with some of our option cards, and he's definitely one of the best, if not the best, sacrificial fodder card that we have. And being able to draw 1 off of this card is still very powerful for the consistency of the deck overall. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gazimon. So Gazimon is basically the purple version of Tapirmon, where he has this really powerful ability where during all turns, your opponents can't gain memory except by tamer effects. So if the whole idea is memory manipulation, Gazimon is really good because it's stopping the opponent from trying to utilize their cards to manipulate their memory after we're trying to manipulate it for them. So Gazimon being able to shut off them from trying to make certain plays is definitely something we really want out of the deck. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Tsukaimon. So Tsukaimon is in here because he has this nice inheritable of on delete, allowing us to gain 1 memory, which is really good, especially on our ultimates, because our ultimates, as you'll see later, will self-delete themselves. So we could utilize Tsukaimon to gain some memory back off of their abilities. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Vilemon. So Vilemon is in here just because he is the blocker of the deck, and him having blocker is definitely really good, especially paired up with all of our on-delete abilities. It makes him definitely a more valuable blocker than a lot of other decks. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Devidramon. So Devidramon is really nice because he has basically the exact same effect as Tsukaimon, where on delete gain 1 memory as an inheritable skill, and if most of the time we're just digivolving up into our ultimates, then being able to trigger this ability is definitely really powerful because it combos with just everything that the deck is trying to be doing. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Meramon. So Meramon is in here because he is just that tempo efficient card, and that's all we really look to utilize the card for, is the fact that he has an evo cost of 1. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Arukenimon. So Arukenimon is a really nice Digimon because she has this great when attacking ability where we could pay 3 memory and then we get to play 1 MaloMyotismon from our hand without paying its memory cost, and then we get to delete this Digimon. So this is the big thing on what the deck is trying to do. It's basically trying to digivolve all the way up into our ultimates, and then have our ultimates play our main mega, which is going to be MaloMyotismon for free, and then the on-delete ability will just start triggering so many different abilities. So if we have Arukenimon, let's just say, stacked with a Devidramon and a Tsukaimon, then we're going to be gaining 2 memory back for its on-delete, and then if we have DemiMeramon, then we also get to draw 1, discard 1, or if we have DemiMeramon and Gabumon, then we get to essentially draw 3, discard 2, and you can kind of just see all of the synergies just lining up just based on Arukenimon being able to self-delete itself. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Mummymon. So Mummymon is basically almost exactly the same thing as Arukenimon, except his when attacking ability allows us to play a MaloMyotismon from our trash instead of our hand. So this is really good because no matter where MaloMyotismon is, we're always able to try to play him based on Arukenimon or Mummymon. So if we try to draw into him and we have Arukenimon on the field, then we could utilize Arukenimon to play Malo. Or if he's in our trash because we discarded him, then we could utilize Mummymon to play MaloMyotismon from our trash. So just being able to control where MaloMyotismon is and how we want to utilize them based on our ultimates definitely makes running both of our ultimates very powerful. Even though they don't give any inheritable abilities to Venom, we're not really looking to utilize any inheritable abilities on our Mega level Digimon. But speaking of our Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of VenomMyotismon. So VenomMyotismon is a really decent support card to MaloMyotismon because he is sharing a very similar theme on trying to manipulate the opponent's memory. So one of his abilities is during the opponent's turn. When one of your opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, then we get to gain 1 memory. So us gaining 1 memory is effectively taking away one of the opponent's memory, and depending on the matchup, this could be really powerful because if they're basically just trying to attack and we have Venom on the field, then for each one of those attacks, we're going to be taking away 1 of their memory, and then on top of which, and let's just say a green matchup where they're trying to use the Digisorption ability, then we also get to take away a memory for them using Digisorption. So Venom is just a really powerful support mega just because he is still playing with the theme of manipulating the memory. And then on top of him doing that, he also has the Security Attack +1 ability, so we could utilize him to try to push the aggression onto the opponent's security to try to close out games faster, and he has 12,000 DP naturally, which is a lot higher than a lot of the other purple megas that we could be thinking about. And then the main mega of the deck is going to be MaloMyotismon. So I already did a deck profile on MaloMyotismon, so if you want to figure out how to upgrade him to make him even better, you could go click that. But MaloMyotismon on a budget is still a very powerful card just because of everything this card is doing. So the first big thing is that he has the nice piercing ability, so we could utilize him to control the opponent's board by attacking into their rested Digimon, and then on top of which he has this really powerful ability where during all turns, whenever another Digimon is deleted, we get to gain 1 memory. So this is kind of like a pseudo-control type deck where the whole objective is to try to get MaloMyotismon out, and then utilize MaloMyotismon to start manipulating the memory in some various different ways depending on how we play the game. So the big whole combo on MaloMyotismon and some really decent setups is we're going to have like Arukenimon or Mummymon stacked with a Devidramon and Tsukaimon, so that way when Arukenimon or Mummymon dies, with Tsukaimon and Devidramon, we're going to be gaining the 3 memory back from when we spent on their abilities. So that's just some really powerful synergy on why we want to utilize those types of cards. And MaloMyotismon does trigger on our own, so we could line up, let's just say, like a Tapirmon with one of our options to just delete a whole bunch of Digimon, and it just makes our option that much more efficient. So MaloMyotismon being able to manipulate the memory like he does is definitely really powerful based on all of the different types of support and synergies that we have in the deck. The only unfortunate thing about MaloMyotismon is because we are playing him off of Mummymon or Arukenimon most of the time, we can't reasonably rely on him having any inheritable abilities, which is why we're focusing all of our inheritable abilities on trying to make the most use out of our ultimate level Digimon. Next, onto the options, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Night Raid. So Night Raid is still a pretty decent option for the deck just because it allows us to play a purple level 3 Digimon from our trash for free. Unfortunately, we don't get its on-play abilities, but none of our level 3s have on-play abilities, so we really get to start to think about how we want to utilize a lot of our Digimon, and Night Raid is definitely a good card to allow us to utilize them in some various different ways. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Heat Viper. So Heat Viper is definitely one of the better budget removal cards that we have access to, just because its main ability allows us to delete one of our Digimon to delete up to 2 of the opponent's at level 4 or lower Digimon. Yes, unfortunately it doesn't reach any of the higher levels, but the fact that we could potentially delete 3 Digimon off of this card is still very powerful, because if we do delete 3 Digimon off of this card with a MaloMyotismon sitting on the field, then we're going to be gaining 3 memory back, and that's just, again, really powerful on top of whatever on-delete synergy that we have going on with the card that we're sacrificing. So even though this isn't necessarily the best and strongest of option cards to utilize to delete the opponent's Digimon, it's still a very powerful one and shouldn't be underestimated nonetheless. And then the last option card of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Necrophobia. So Necrophobia is a really decent card for the deck just because our deck relies so heavily on our ultimates, where we really need to see those in order to play any of our megas, which is the whole point of the deck, where we want to get up into our megas and then sit on our megas to try to deal some damage and manipulate the opponent's memory. So the fact that we have Necrophobia to allow us to just be able to play our megas that much easier is definitely why we want to run the card. And then the last card of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Matt Ishida. So Matt Ishida is just a really powerful memory fixing tamer just because, well, he's a memory fixing tamer. So we'll always make sure that we have 3 memory. And then on top of which he has a really nice on-play ability where we get to return a purple Digimon or purple option card from our trash to our hand. So the fact that we could utilize a lot of our looting effects to try to set up our trash so that way we can make the most out of Matt Ishida is definitely really powerful and really decent for the deck. And then there's just a whole bunch of other cards that you could think about utilizing the deck, especially on a budget, and depending on what your budget is and how you want to build the deck. So you could think about utilizing Wizardmon. So Wizardmon is really good because he has this nice on-delete ability to draw us a card. So he's basically the Tapirmon on the champion level, and if you are running any yellow cards in the deck, then you could utilize him for his retaliation ability. It's just, I feel like with the way the deck is currently set up, it doesn't necessarily support that, but it's still definitely something to think about. Then we could also think about running Gabumon. So Gabumon is really only good for our supporting Mega, which is why he's not really in the deck, because we're not relying on our Megas to have any inheritable abilities to be as powerful as they possibly can. But if you are able to utilize Gabumon, he's really powerful for the deck because he has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn, once per turn, when one of your other Digimon is deleted, then we get to gain 1 memory. So he is fitting on theme with memory manipulation. Next, you could think about utilizing Black Gatomon. So Black Gatomon being a purple security Digimon is definitely really good because having Black Gatomon come out of the security is just really powerful. So that way we could utilize her to Digivolve up into our ultimates, so that way we could play our Megas. And that's a really powerful thing, or just having a surprise Digimon to just try to be aggressive or utilize it for fodder purposes is definitely still a very good use of the card. So just the amount of high usability that the security effect on this Digimon has definitely makes it a really powerful card to consider. Next, if you do want to think about playing a more traditional evolution style in your deck and have Malo be more of a support card, where Gurumon and subsequently the tempo efficient ultimates are all really good to think about utilizing. Where Gurumon is really nice with MaloMyotismon on the field just because he has this nice inheritable ability of when attacking once per turn, we can delete one of our other Digimon to unsuspend this Digimon. So with MaloMyotismon on the field, utilizing this ability will also gain us a memory, and again, that's just some really powerful synergy to be thinking about. Next, if you want to splurge on a really decent Mega, you could think about utilizing Metal Garurumon because it is one of the cheaper purple Megas that's an SR. So what this card is doing is it has a good when attacking ability where you can play one purple level 3 Digimon from your trash for free, and then you don't get any of its on play effects, but again, that part doesn't matter. Just the fact that we're able to consistently keep up the pressure and res our level 3s to utilize them in some various different ways is a really solid thing on why you'd want to consider picking up Metal Garurumon. Next, you could also think about utilizing Boltmon, just because Boltmon is very tempo efficient, and if the whole point of the deck is trying to be efficient, then Boltmon is just, again, another really good supporting Mega, because whether we go up into him or not doesn't really matter, because he's just there for being an extra Mega level body and a good beater. Next, we could think about utilizing Darkness Claw, just because we aren't able to gain any DP on any of our inheritables, and we can't reasonably expect our Megas to have any inheritables, so having something like Darkness Claw to DP boost them makes them even more threatening because they could hit for higher numbers, and they could hit even harder than they could before, on top of which Darkness Claw also has a really nice security ability of gaining us to memory, so it's basically like a Hammer Spark in the security, and in our hand, it allows us to DP boost our Digimon, and this is especially dangerous on something like a MaloMyotismon, where he has the piercing ability, so boosting him to hit above over the opponent's other Mega level Digimon, definitely some very, very powerful synergy and interactions that we're looking for. If you want to splurge a little bit more, you could think about running Trump Sword. So Trump Sword is a very fantastic option card for the deck just because of what this card is doing. So already it's being pretty good at being able to delete one of the opponent's unsuspended Digimon. So just again, being able to delete the Digimon allows you to get memory back if Malo is on the field. And then if Malo is also on the field and you're thinking about utilizing this card, then it catches the opponent in a no-win situation where they either keep their Digimon unsuspended and have it be a possible target for Trump Sword, or they have their Digimon suspended at the risk of having MaloMyotismon attack into them, and then that Digimon will get deleted, then piercing damage will deal damage to their security. So Trump Sword is just another very fantastic option card for the deck to be running. Next, you could think about utilizing Back for Revenge. So Back for Revenge is a pretty interesting option card just because its main ability of giving one of your Digimon the on-delete ability to replay itself is really, really good. So that way you could kind of like kamikaze into the opponent's Digimon, then yours will come back. And then if Malo's on the field, then you gain a memory for that. Or if you're utilizing this off of the ultimates, then they'll self-delete themselves and then bring themselves back. So there's some really powerful synergy that this card has with the deck. It's just the only unfortunate thing is it doesn't have a security ability, which is the only thing really holding this card back. And then the last card I want to highlight is the purple version of Mimi. So the purple version of Mimi is definitely a really solid tamer card to be thinking about, just because she has this nice ability where during both players' turns, whenever a player uses an option card, we could suspend this tamer to gain one memory. So whether we're playing the option card or the opponent is playing the option card doesn't necessarily matter. The whole idea behind the card is manipulating the memory, and we are playing a decent number of option cards in the deck, so we could reasonably think about utilizing Mimi to just enhance and enforce more memory manipulation. So for the most part, this is just what I think the new budget purple deck is doing. The MaloMyotismon engine is definitely a really interesting engine because of all of the flexibility you have, where if you really want to double down on it like I did here, then it's definitely a really powerful engine that you could think about utilizing. Or if you want to tech it in more of a supporting engine, then it's also really good at being a good supporting engine as well, just because of how unique the interactions between him and his support cards are and everything that the deck and purple is doing as a whole. So I definitely think this is a really fun purple deck, and it definitely has a whole bunch of powerful, flexible options based on the different budget levels that you want to incorporate, and I definitely think this is going to be a really fun deck to be messing around with. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, I'll have the deck list down in the description below, and feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comment section below. I do have a TCG Player affiliate link also down in the description below, so if you're thinking about buying your cards off of TCG Player, using that link will also help me and support the channel. So feel free to use that to buy your cards off of TCG Player. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.